super excited to talk with you today. And that kind of bleeds into what we're going to kind of chat through first today, which is an article that you wrote called What to Expect When Starting Sex Therapy at MyCounselor Online. I love that you wrote this because I think maybe a big thing for people is not knowing what to expect. And so then they just don't do it if they need it. And so I'm excited to talk about that. Just kind of start with what inspired you to write this article?
Mhm. So many clients that I have that first session with will say, we've been struggling with this in our marriage for a decade or, for several years and just not known where to turn, especially within the faith world, like who to talk to about this. And I think it's just this fear of whether what they're experiencing is worthy of seeking therapy. Can anybody understand what it is that they're going through or can help them? Just getting really busy with life and kind of like putting that on the back burner. And I've just heard so many stories of, man, I wish I would have done this sooner. I wish, like, after we've gotten into the work and they've really eased in, it's like, oh, why don't we do this sooner? And I thought, well, part of that is because I think people just don't have any idea of, what to expect whenever they're experiencing sexual struggles within their marriage, and what sex therapy is going to look like. Is it going to be weird? Is it going to be weird or uncomfortable? Or who in the world is a sex therapist? And why do they do that job? And so it's like, just can we trust? Can we trust? And so the article is just really to help those people that might be kind of teetering on the fence and just need a little bit of information before they would make the call to seek the help.
Yeah, so good. I mean, you just kind of answered this question, but my next question was gonna kind of be, who's this article written for? But I guess it is written for those people who are just sort of teetering and trying to figure out if this is for them. So super great. I would love to know how sex therapy at MCO is different than just your general sex therapy that you would choose to go to. How is it
Yeah.
different?
Yeah. Well, it is fully integrated with faith. So what we know to be true is God is the author and designer of us as humans, and we are not disconnected as humans from the sexual part of us. And so he didn't just design us and is indifferent to the sexual part of who we are. He designed it. He created it. He desires for it to be a blessing to us, a satisfying part of our life, and not just in the marriage, but individually. And so um, that is the first thing, is just to be able to integrate that. That is what's different. That we don't leave out God and his design for sex. Second, I think there are certain things that I'll notice that my clients that have been in the church that have struggled in and around just like the teaching or the silence of, and a Christian or a secular sex therapist might not be able to fully grasp and understand what that struggle has looked like and how to be able to help to where we can, because that's something that I've experienced and have gone through. And so my experience can definitely help a person that's seeking that additional Christian component of sex therapy.
Yeah,
And we allow them
great
to
point.
grapple with things, right? We allow them the space to be able to grapple with things that might not be for them. That a secular sex therapist, they might not really truly understand the conviction that they might have around certain things sexually.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think the point that you mentioned about, if you've grown up or if, you've been an adult in that space in the church, and in that kind of culture that maybe hides away from talking about it, that can affect your whole perspective of it. And so you need someone who understands that, who has been in that space or knows of that space, to kind of process that with you, because that's really, really difficult.
Yeah. And it
So
is an ease in, and it is an ease in for my clients to be able to understand that it is okay to talk about it. that it
Mm.
is okay to express what it is that they're feeling and what they're experiencing, that there's isn't anything wrong with that. And so it's this moment with my clients that I watch them take a deep breath, and it's like, enjoy, just like soak in this safe place to
Mm.
be able to share all of the things that they're experiencing without fear of it being wrong.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That is really, really good. So how do you know if you need a sex therapist? Is there kind of like a threshold you cross and you're like, we need sex therapy? How do you know? Does everyone need it? What are your thoughts on that?
Mhm. Well, I personally think that we all need a little bit of guidance as far as that part of our marriage, because, kind of what we hear, and especially what we hear within the church, is sex before marriage, it's bad. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's bad. It's bad. But then what you hear about sex after marriage is it's good. And that's it. Like, all you hear is it's good. After marriage
Right,
is
and
good.
it's so hard to, like, I even think about when I first got married, so I've been married, a little over a year and a half now, but I do think of, when we were dating and it was like sex, sex, no, 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 and then it was like, "Oh, yes, like, go crazy, do it," and then it's like, it's so hard, your brain has the hardest time, like, disconnecting those, and
Mhm.
it's very difficult, and, thankfully, we didn't have too much trouble kind of jumping into that part of our lives, but I have friends who really really struggled to
Mhm.
just adjust to that and really just like change their entire mindset by
Mhm.
themselves around
Mhm.
sex.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, add to that the fact that there hasn't been a lot of preparation. So it's like, is sex just something that comes naturally and it's just easy and you just know what to do with your body and with your spouse's body? Generally, no. Like, we need some sort of, understanding or education and
Right,
around that. And
right.
so, like, I think there needs to be some, like, I love premarital work. I love being able to walk couples through some extensive sex therapy and premarital work to number one, understand, is there something from your history that might be a barrier in your marriage that you don't understand prior to coming in? We can kind of process that and talk about it before you hit that wall within your marriage. But then also just the education around understanding your body, understanding your spouse's body, understanding that it's good to talk about it, it's okay to talk about it, kind of, rip the band-aid off beforehand to where you can start really good vulnerable conversations about sex. I was like 10 years into my marriage before I didn't blush talking about sex with my husband, right? That it's just like something that sometimes we will engage in, but we won't talk about. And so, really, just being able to be so comfortable talking about this really important part of our marriage. And so, I think everybody needs a little bit of sex therapy. However, I think that if you are experiencing something, whether you've been married 2 weeks or 20 years, if you're experiencing something that there's some concern with, or there's some dissatisfaction with, or there's just or you're really conflicting about it, that you know it's worthy of taking a look at. It's worthy of reaching out and figuring it out, because it is a really precious, important part of marriage. And figuring out, because I have some couples that have just like minimized it so much that it's just this problem, but we just don't think about it. But
Mhm.
they don't really understand the consequences that that's having in the meantime. And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. No, that's great. I this is kind of a hypothetical, but not really, because I feel like we get a lot of questions kind of with this exact situation. But say that one spouse kind of sees that need for sex therapy and sees that that's an issue for them
mhm,
and for the relationship, and the other doesn't.
mhm,
What steps can you take with that in order to kind of both receive that therapy?
yeah, I do have a lot of individuals that come in that would strongly desire for their spouse to be there with them in sex therapy. And so, um, we'll begin their work individually, and that's such an option to be able to start that individually. And I've had so many spouses that, once their spouse engaged and they saw that it wasn't weird or wasn't going to be accusing or finger pointing, that I'm not weird, and somebody that that can really be helpful, then I've had so many couples to where their spouses joined them just after a few sessions, and we've been able to do that work together. But it is okay to come in individually, even if you have the sexual concerns about your marriage. There's some grief to that if your spouse isn't willing to come with you, and we can process through all of that. But I would just encourage anybody that is experiencing any kind of difficulty in this area, whether together or individually, to reach out. We can help.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's great, great advice. Because that's a hard situation to be in.
Yeah.
It's hard, it's very lonely.
Yeah.
That is just so hard to be in. And
Because
so
nobody talks about it, right?
right, right. And
So
and
it's
it feels like this thing, this like barrier, like you can't, which to a point, like, you don't want to go around like airing out
sure.
your whole life to everyone. But at the same time, I do think there's maybe this culture of like, you don't talk about
Yeah.
sexual difficulties or anything going on in your marriage with anyone else. And so
Yeah.
that's a very like lonely space to be in, especially when your spouse doesn't want to talk about it either.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So that there's been all kinds of books written about it, that there's actual jobs centered around helping people around sexual struggles, but for some reason when we're in the midst of it, we do feel very alone, like we're the only one struggling, that we don't really know where to turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when people do kind of turn toward MCO for their sex therapy,
Mhm.
you talk about the first 4 sessions, kind of what to expect in each session.
Mhm.
Will you just expand on that for the people who are tuning in today?
Yeah. Yeah, so that first session, I'm just going to really normalize that this is a really tender, precious issue that we're talking about. And of course, they're probably nervous. Some couples I have aren't nervous, they're just crazy excited to be there. But so I have kind of on the spectrum of either or, somewhere right in the middle. But I do have, a strong amount of people that are just really nervous. And I think we spend a lot of time, just really normalizing that, and just that I allow them to get to know me a little bit, because I think that's really important, because the relationship that we forge, especially around this tender part of their marriage, is really important. And so, and then we'll get into kind of what their experiences have looked like, what they're bumping up against, what they're struggling, and um, you know, just really, talk through. We've got a plan. And so we'll kind of talk through some reading that I would like them to do. We'll kind of talk about the assessments that I'm going to send them. So there's 4 pretty lengthy assessments that I send out after that first session, that then I'll let them know that the next 2 sessions I'll want to meet with the couple individually. And it's not at all to like hide or keep something from your spouse, but sometimes we just need to talk without fear of like hurting feelings, or we just really need to have a space. And that just helps me really to get to know the spouses individually. And so I really cherish that time to where I can talk with husband and talk with wife individually, and just to get to know what their experience around sexuality through their lifespan up until this point have looked like. And so, and then after we have our individual sessions, so sessions 2 and 3, we'll come back together for that 4th session and just kind of process through what it has been like. Because these are sometimes things that we've kind of shoved aside or pushed under the rug. And so now we're like putting them right in front of us, right? And so what has that been like for you? What conversations maybe have, manifested through, just the early stages of them seeking help, and then kind of talk through what the retraining process is going to look like, and answer any questions that they might have. But then from then on, then we get started in the real work that we'll do together.
Yeah, no, that's so good. So, so good. What encouragement would you give, Lacey, to someone tuning in who maybe is just kind of hit with this, like, oh, that's what I need. Like, I need that. My husband and I need that. My wife and I need that. What encouragement do you want to give to those people who are tuning in right now?
Yeah. Yeah, I just want to say, like, if you're hearing me, if you've read my article, just recognize that the first 4 sessions are, if you don't commit to anything else, commit to the first 4 sessions. And then you can kind of make your mind up after those first 4 sessions that this is for you. But just to kind of make that first step, if you want something different than what you currently have, we can help. We can help with that. And I have a lot of couples that don't have a lot of hope that things can be different. Maybe it's because um, they don't have a lot of hope in themselves to change, or they don't have a lot of hope in their spouse to change. Um, and so, I always let them know that I've got plenty of hope. I've experienced so much um, redemption and restoration with the couples that I've worked with over the years. It's like, I've got plenty of hope. I can lend some to you for a little bit. Just sit down with us. Let us hear your story. Let us, really be an encouragement to you. And then I think that they'll feel safe enough to get started.
Absolutely. Yeah. Lacey, thank you for that. And thank you for writing just such a really well thought out article with just really great intentions of making people feel safe and making
Mhm.
people feel prepared to be able to do a really hard thing.